Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pros and I, Sonaldo, will be reviewing the key hot topics for the week. We greatly appreciate your kind feedback last week, and we're very excited moving forward. We have another packed agenda today, but first, welcome Pros.
Thank you very much, Sonaldo. Very excited to be back for our second episode. Looking forward to this with you. And we've got a packed agenda, as you said, so we can get right into it. I'll quickly start with my game week review. We'll keep it to under 20 seconds. In short, it was a very good week for me, 84 points, led by the four premium defenders, Jota, Salah, and Tony coming up with some points finally. How was your week?
Fantastic. I actually outscored you and had 88 points. So fantastic week for me as well. Huge green arrow moving up, almost 60K. So very, very happy with the result. And, my key differential was Ben Foster in goals. So I think that was the difference between us.
What an amazing assist that was.
Extremely lucky, but... for the viewers, today we have two hot topics. So the first involves a replacement for a player that has not only given us tremendous pain in his spelling and pronunciations, but on the pitch he did everything from hitting the post multiple times, including this weekend. VAR ruled out goals, VAR ruled out assists, formation switches, everything except scoring FPL points. And most of us have had enough of the 2-1-0-2-2 in the last 5 weeks. And it is, of course, Mbeumo. So that is our first topic, which Pros will cover. And then in the second topic, we're going to review new emerging strikers in a set of players in the forward line that have largely disappointed us this season. So Pros, without further ado, the floor is yours. Who is the best mid-price, around 6 million price bracket midfielder that we can aim to get?
Thank you. So what I'll do is, firstly, the big picture point, which is why are we looking at the 6 million bracket? Why is that important? I think with people moving to a four at the back formation, then you add to that the Salah, Kane, Jota, Foden type people, which are, if they're not important in terms of people, I mean, Salah definitely is, but they're important in terms of price points. So what that leaves is a few options for in the 6 million bracket. So even if people have Mbeumo and want to keep him, there's still a second slot for a 6 million midfielder that people are looking for. So we thought, why not spend a little bit more time on this and give you our four best replacements. So we're going to be talking about Emil Smith-Rowe, somebody who's done really well early season. Conor Gallagher, he seems to be the favorite of, at least from last week, where a lot of people went for him. Maxwell Cornet, he keeps doing well. He keeps scoring goals, so we'll look into him. And then the West Ham midfielder that's gone slightly under the radar in the sense that everyone's gone for Antonio, but Bowen has done really well as well. So we'll look at him. He's almost at the high end of the bracket we're looking at, but we'll come to that. So we'll compare these players on stats, fixtures, roles in the team, and we'll take a longer term view on a position where you don't want to generally be switching in and out of. I mean, these are not high ceiling positions. So what you want is get somebody who you can keep through basically the next 10, 15 game weeks. So I'm going to start with Gallagher. He's 6.0 million, 22% owned. What we like about him, he's very involved in the attack. He's making great runs into the box. He's playing for a Palace team that is revitalized under Patrick Vieira. A lot of his goals are coming when an attack is broken up and he comes in to add the extra man to make space for a shot or comes in with an assist. And, it's a very attacking team, as I said. Eze is back. He's close to match fitness. Edouard is back in the fray. Benteke has looked good, and we've said that for the last 6 years without, any change in that. Mm-hmm. So they have talent in their attack. And what I wanted to do, Sonaldo, first is basically look at how are they set up, because there's a lot of names. This is a new team. Many people wouldn't be familiar with how Palace generally set up. Mm-hmm. So let's start with how do Palace look? Firstly, the back five. I know we're not talking about the back five, but in terms of just their formation, the back five of Guaita, Ward, Anderson, Guehi, Mitchell. These guys are nailed, and they're there to stay. In front of them, usually Vieira plays a 4-3-3. So there's three guys in midfield. One of them is always Gallagher. One of them used to always be James MacArthur. And the third one used to be Kouyaté, Ridderwold, Hughes, Eze, Milivojevic. It depends on the team and the tactics. And then up front, you have Zaha on the left as the left attacker. Up top, you have Benteke or Edward. Sometimes Zaha can play up top. And then on the right forward, you have Olise, Eze. Sometimes Edward plays there. Jordan Ayew played there over the weekend. So in terms of the mix, it's highly crowded up top. But the general sentiment amongst Palace fans is that Gallagher is nailed. So what are the cons? Why what we should think about Gallagher? It's basically James McArthur, who's a key player for them, has looked at being the facilitator in midfield. He's been injured, and he got injured last week. Vieira said it's a few weeks or a couple of weeks, but Mark Woosnam, the Athletic journalist, basically tweeted yesterday, and he thinks it's about 6 to 8 weeks. Now that's a lot of time in our game week, from that perspective, because in 6 to 8 weeks, we'll probably have 12, 13 game weeks.
Exactly.
So we have to basically think of life absent James McArthur. And so what we're going to try and do is look at some stats on what it means if James McArthur isn't playing. What does it mean for Gallagher? But before I go there, I wanted to get your input, Sonaldo, on what do you think about Crystal Palace in general? Gallagher, is he somebody you've looked at?
Certainly. I actually was trying to make a early move to him because I was afraid of a price rise, and I had 0.4 to do the Mbeumo to Gallagher move, which would have set up my team beautifully. And I remember waking up, because I'm located in South Korea, and there was a price rise, so I'm priced out of it now. So I need to, figure out a way to make 2 transfers, but I don't want to let go of any of my other players. So Conor Gallagher is someone I'm very interested in. And as you mentioned, Prost, there's so many attacking options right now. Sometimes the worry with this is where the points are going to be spread out, right? So we have to kind of pick out who's going to deliver the most points out of the bunch. So hopefully you can kind of enlighten us on that.
Yeah. So let's go to this slide where I first compare the first 5 games that Gallagher played, and then to the games 6 to 9 when Milivojevic started. So these are stats per 90. And what you see here is basically there's a drastic drop in Gallagher's XG. So he's basically shooting a lot less. He's more withdrawn, and it's basically because Milivojevic is aging, right? I mean, he has to be basically more further down, helping with the defense when Milivojevic plays. What's worse is the XA is basically completely absent when he's there. Why is that? Because actually he's not even on set plays. A lot of the set plays are taken by Milivojevic. He's been a darling, I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when he was taking pen, Zaha was basically getting tripped and Milivojevic was scoring. So we already know that he's the guy who takes a lot of the set pieces. So does this mean we don't go for Gallagher at all? I don't think so, because reading from a lot of the Crystal Palace fans forums, people don't like Milivojevic starting in that 11. Many Palace fans have suggested that Mili and Kouyaté in the same team like they went with in last week, and it doesn't work. So something will have to change. Hughes is somebody who's actually been injured for a while, but is coming back, and they've suggested that he could be the guy. He's obviously younger. He can have more defensive duties. He's somebody who can basically come in and take away not only the defensive duty away from Gallagher, but also, he can come back on set pieces. Another variant of this is you could have Eze coming back. So you have Kouyaté, Gallagher, and Eze starting. Now that's super ultra attacking, because then you have the 3 forwards, Eze and Gallagher. That's actually not great for Gallagher, because Eze will be the number 10, and then you won't have Gallagher going up top. So having said all of that, in the last game, this was the case. Milivojevic started. Gallagher created 2 big chances. He got an assist. So I'm going to come to summary on who we recommend in the end when we compare all our 4 guys together. But I think with this one, it's more a case of get him. He'll tick along. He's playing for an attacking team. I will come to my recommendation when we talk about the other players as well.
Awesome.
Anything else to add on Gallagher before I move on?
No, I want to point out that when Milivojevic is playing, you can kind of see, like, whether he's playing or not, actually, you can see Gallagher kind of wanting to make those bursting runs, but it exposes him behind, right? So at times you can kind of catch him not make those runs. So I'm very interested in if that's an order by Vieira himself. So yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah, as I said, with the 6 to 8 week injury, something's going to change. Some formation is going to change. So actually, in a way, maybe a blessing in disguise for you that you were able to wait a week. We see another lineup. How are they looking without James McArthur? And then take it from there. But Moving on to the next one. So that's Smith-Rowe. Now, look, there's not a lot to say. We've been talking about Smith-Rowe since early season. The guy has looked fantastic. Jamie Carragher called him the best player in the Premier League, running with the ball. He's more nailed than ever before. And I say that because he used to earlier rotate with Pepe. We weren't sure how Odegaard fits into the team. But he's basically made that left forward position his own. He's doing well. He's high on confidence. We know about him. We know what he's been doing. My issue with him is he's actually been a little bit lucky with the returns. And of course, a lot of FPL is luck. But when you're making a decision to get him in now, if you have him, you keep him. He's a good option for the long term. But if you're making that pick now, you want to be a little bit cautious. So I've presented in the next table, basically, I've not put names down here, but basically ESR is the guy on the left. There's a guy on the right who's very similar in price, who plays in midfield. And look at this. I mean, he's got almost twice the XG as Smith-Rowe. He's got, 1.4 of XA compared to 1 and this is for the whole season, by the way. And 44 minutes per attempt. ESR is on 61. Who is this guy? Can you take a guess, Ronaldo?
Gonna say his teammate Saka.
Of course it is. And I didn't show the heat maps. Heat maps are better as well. So at this point, a lot of the viewers who own Saka and not ESR are going to be annoyed. And they will, of course, bemoan luck. And that's absolutely correct. I mean, Saka has been great. He's only 6.4 himself, by the way. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of ESR's returns have come, even though he's been not as good an asset as Saka. He scored 4 goals. Saka has got just the 1. So my issue with ESR is he even the best option at Arsenal? So if you're considering that, look at that before you make a decision. Of course, he's 0.2 cheaper. No, actually 0.4. So Saka's 6.3 and Smith-Rowe is 5.9. So 0.4 may be decent enough for you to take that saving, but I would say he has had lady luck on his side for all these returns that you've got.
I will say this, Pras, about the luck issue, because I know exactly what you're talking about. His goals, the ball kind of fell into place and he was there to finish. By the way, ESR has a cannon of a shot, but when Arteta kind of switched to the 4-2-2-2, it really caters towards those central midfielders, right? And it's given him the freedom and the positional prowess, I guess. And I think that yes, it's lucky, but he's going to continue to be in those dangerous spaces and in those dangerous half spaces where, again, the ball might fall to him and he just needs to get 1 or 2 good chances in the game to get those scores in. So with that being said, by looking at this graph, Pras, I have a quick question. Does this mean that ESR is overperforming, or would you not read too much into under and overperforming?
I definitely would read into too much overperforming. And what we'll do is at the end, when we compare all four players, I've got a graph actually which shows XGI overperformance. So it's a very interesting question. I'll hold the answer on that when we get there.
Okay.
Right. So next one, Cornet. Now, he's basically the guy, I tweeted this on the weekend. He's the guy who everyone thought Mbeumo would be because he's a midfielder playing up top around that price range, new signing. Mbeumo isn't a new signing, but basically an exciting player in the team that is out of position. He scored 5 goals in the last 6 games he's played. He's only 1.8% owned and available at 6.1. So, what do we know about him and why aren't we going for him? So, look, he's such a non-Burnley player, by the way. I mean, before I get into stats, he's like 5'10" in a team with giants who basically like to put the ball in the box, head them in. The Chris Wood, Barnes, Vidra, but he's like a jack in the box. He's the guy who's basically going after when the ball comes up to a volley. I mean, we saw the goal that he scored this weekend. He's basically that guy who's scoring volleys and, screamers from out of the box. So, there's a lot to like about him. He's almost like a Saint-Maximin or a Traore or, basically with some end product. But, in this section, before we get to comparing his numbers with the others, what I wanted to do is I personally have a bias against, how can I get a Burnley attacker, right? I mean, Burnley has been the defensive team that basically has 0 or 2 up max 2 shots in the game. So how can you go for a Burnley player and a Burnley attacker in a world where you can get Smith-Rowe or Gallagher or Bowen? So I did. So there's this chart that I found that compares Burnley in 2021 to the Burnley in 2018, 2019. And I compare that side because that was the golden Pope era. The couple of years when Pope was the guy, he was getting a lot of saves. He was basically the Martinez of that season. So what you see in this is a very big change in terms of how Burnley is playing. And that actually surprised me. I mean, from the eye test, I don't watch enough Burnley games. I'm going to be honest here. I don't know how many viewers do that. But it surprised me that they are having more goal attempts, a lot more, their minutes per chance is 20% better than before. And they're also conceding more. So the conceding more, I think we all recognize that because we all, it used to be template to go for a Burnley defender as your 4th or 5th defender. You couldn't go wrong. It could be Charlie Taylor, Loughton, Ben Mee. So these are guys very reliable, but that we've gone off that. So subconsciously, we do recognize that Burnley isn't the same defensive outfit. They've had change of ownership. Probably Sean Dyche has said, look, I'm happy to sacrifice a goal for a little bit more attacking flair. Now, he's still a pragmatic manager. I'm not saying they've suddenly become Crystal Palace, but I found this interesting to see that there's actually a stark difference in how they performed back in 2019, 2018 versus what they're doing this season. And probably if I had done this for last season, it would be somewhat similar. But in a nutshell, what I want to say when people are considering Cornet is don't think of him as a Burnley player. Think of him as an attacking player in a semi-attacking team. And that's basically a mindset thing. And we'll come to his numbers when we compare all the 4 players together. Anything on Cornet before I move on, Sonaldo?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. The common narrative is Burnley's a very defensive team, but this season we've seen different. And I like your description of Cornet being such a different type of Burnley player. So that was very nicely put there. And let's move on to the next guy.
All right. So the next one is Bowen. 6.4, 3.1% owned. And, with him, he's like a guy who's, at least for me, he's gone completely under the radar. Whether that's under the radar because we already have the guy, an attacker, you don't want to double up in attack. West Ham had semi-difficult fixtures and now have very difficult fixtures in the next 3. So it wasn't somebody I considered at all. But he's got 8 returns since game week 5. He looks like the creative force. West Ham have looked to do well. I mean, they beat Liverpool. They are a team that are doing well, and everyone expects them to be in the top 6, 8 teams and reasonably attacking. So why not? I mean, in a lot of this, a lot of people think eggs, too many eggs in one basket. Do I want Antonio and Bowen? But now we're presented with an opportunity of either Bowen and Antonio. So a lot of people have sold Antonio, and we'll come to that in your section. So I think Bowen becomes very interesting because people will want somebody from West Ham going forward from game week 15 onwards after they've played Chelsea and Man City. And he could be an interesting one, both for people who want to double up or for people who want to replace Antonio and have some West Ham coverage. So what I wanted to do here in terms of a table is just make this point exactly, which is if you look at the expected data for Bowen on the left, for Antonio on the right, and this is basically all games since game week 5. Game week 5 because that's the time when Antonio missed 1 game. So in all these games, Bowen has an XG of 2.5 versus Antonio 1.76. He has an XA of 0.8 compared to Antonio with 0.63. So in all, the XGI is over 3.3 for Bowen compared to 2.4 for Antonio. Now, I have to say, Antonio's the XGI is pretty good as well. It's not bad at all. But he's set the standards in the first few games that he's just not met. And regardless if you think Antonio is good enough or not, I would really think Bowen is somebody who's worth our consideration. Because out of West Ham, Burnley, Crystal Palace and Arsenal, I think West Ham and Arsenal are expected to finish the higher. Now, Crystal Palace fans, I know, are very excited and they're very optimistic about the season. But I would still say, I think West Ham and Arsenal would be above them. So you're basically getting a more longer term reliance on somebody who will play for a team that will continue to do well, score goals. So yeah, I like Bowen a lot, and I'll come to my recommendation when we compare them side by side. So why don't we do that now? Now that we've talked about one key aspect about all four of these guys, so let's compare them all together. So first, let's do it on fixtures. We've got the fixture ticker up, and you see the reason I've suggested we go right until game week 23 is because that's the winter break. So what you want is now we are coming into a very busy period with games thick and fast. You want to have some guy who you can kind of rely on through this period, and all these guys are reasonably nailed. So I don't. This wasn't even a discussion on who's not nailed, but you want to hold them for a period where their fixtures are good. So Burnley is actually top of the ticker in the next 10, 11 game weeks, if you look at it from this lens. Arsenal are third, Crystal Palace are fifth, and where am I seeing West Ham? West Ham are somewhere in the middle, actually in the bottom half. But with West Ham, I would say once you move past Man City and Chelsea in the next three, they would also be very, very good options in terms of high up in the fixture ticker. For sure. So anything that stands out in terms of the fixtures for these guys that you're looking at, Sonaldo?
No, I think you put it perfectly. I'm very interested in Bowen. I'm very interested in the West Ham assets because I'm looking long term, and this fixture ticker can be deceiving because it's including 13, 14, and 15. So I like the idea of Bowen replacing, because one thing about Antonio is that people don't realize, as a seller myself, it may be difficult to hop on back onto Antonio, which is something that people probably don't think about, which is why in many ways I recommend holding onto him if you're already kept onto him. But I'm very interested in Bowen, as well as, dare I say it, Ben Johnson. But that's for another day. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, we'll do a 30-minute stream on Ben Johnson next week. Okay, let's look at the data. So, I mean, in terms of fixtures, what I wanted to point out before we go on is that these are guys who you want to get. Burnley, great fixtures. Arsenal, great fixtures. Palace, great fixtures in the long term. So this is the reason why we picked these guys, and, avoid, by the way, you see Leeds at the bottom here. You see Aston Villa at the bottom here. Wolves at the bottom. So there may be options from there. But we wanted to focus more on the guys who we think you can get now or in a couple of weeks. So the next page is the attacking data. And we've highlighted here, this is attacking data for the last 4 game weeks, not expected, what they've done. And look, Cornet is, tied with Salah for 4 goals in the last 4 game weeks. But here's the catch. He's got essentially 5 attempts on goal. From 5 attempts, he scored 4 goals. He's got 8 penalty box touches. Two of his goals have been outside the box, but he's basically in the last 4 game weeks touched the ball in the penalty box 8 times. Now, for me, that is exceptional overperformance. Now, of course, this happened last year with Jesse Lingard. It happened for a very brief time with James Justin, I think, where he kept scoring, where his XGI wasn't as high.
This year, Hwang as well.
Can happen. You see, yeah, Hwang as well in the first couple of game weeks. Yep, you're right. So it can happen. But what I'm trying to say is there'll be a table we'll talk about next, which is the XGI overperformance. Cornet is going to be top. And that's my issue when I compare him. The next one is Smith-Rowe. Smith-Rowe scored 3 goals in the last 4 game weeks. 2 inside the box, 1 outside the box. But again, 5 goal attempts. So in the 5 attempts, he's got 3 goals. He's got, in terms of touches in the box, 3. And by the way, for context, for those who are listening, Salah has 41. Yeah, it's not the same bracket, but these are, you still want your guy to be in the box, touching the ball. Yes, he scored 3 goals, but we should also look at these factors when we consider players who we want to bring in long term. Because as I said with Smith-Rowe, you might have had the rub of the green with these 3 goals. Will he get 3 goals in the next 6 pen touches? No, not really.
Pros, quick question here. How important do you value penalty area touches for a midfielder?
It's basically a proxy for heat maps for me. Okay. So yeah, I know that, XGI will cover everything. XGI takes into account, if you're making excellent shots from outside the penalty box, then you can have 0 pen box touches and 10 goals in the season. That's fine. Understood. Because the XGI will then look at that. But I would say if you're looking at people with the same, in the same price bracket who have similar roles in the team, I mean, Cornet is a striker. If you've had 8 touches in the box in 4 games, not so good. So I like to look at it as a more soft factor to basically, as I said, proxy the heat map. Then you have Gallagher. Gallagher has had 8 pen box touches. It's a little better. 2 goals and 6 attempts on goal. He's got minutes per chance of 57. So it's It's better than Smith-Rowe and Cornet. And he's basically somebody. He's got I think I mentioned 11 pen box touches. So he's somebody who basically will gives the impression that will tick along. He's somewhat more involved in the attack, but it also tells you that Crystal Palace as a team is more attacking. Mm-hmm. And then you come to Bowen. Bowen's got 23 pen box touches. So basically almost 4 times Smith-Rowe, 3 times Cornet, double of Gallagher. He's only got 1 goal, which was inside the box. He's basically got total 12 attempts on goal, which is more than double of any one of Gallagher, Cornet, or Smith-Rowe. And essentially, he's creating the minutes per chance is half of anyone else, which is half of Gallagher. So he's got 27.8 minutes per chance. If you go to the next slide, which is looking at the XGI, and this is also the last 4 game weeks, but this is now sorted by XGI. So the XGI is, for me, the main metric. You don't need to look at pen box touches or shots in the box. All of that is captured in the XGI, which is your percentage of goal creation chance and the assist chance. So there's some interesting names here. And this is XGI, by the way, for everyone under 6.5. Very interesting names in here, which is Trossard is number 1 at about 2.5. Saka is number 2. So that's the giveaway for the ESR comparison. And Bowen is number 3. You have Fornals as well, who's 1.6 of XGI compared to Bowen 2.2, which is why I thought if we're comparing 2, Bowen is the guy to go for if you're going for a West Ham midfielder. You have Sarr. Then you have Gallagher at 1.3. Cornet is 0.68. Smith-Rowe 0.72. And Mbeumo is, by the way, at the bottom of this at 0.62. So in a nutshell, what we're trying to say is, go for the guy who's showing the underlying statistics that mean you can predict their returns in the future the most. And what is interesting, the column next to the XGI is basically the delta. So this is everything that I was talking about on the table. Cornet has an XGI delta of 3.3. That means he scored or assisted 3.3 more time or 3.3 more events than the XGI suggests. So basically, the 4 goal involvements should more likely have been 0.7. That's what it's trying to say. The second highest XGI delta, Smith-Rowe with 3.3. And again, Gallagher is somebody we talked about should tick along, but his XGI delta is very high as well. It's 2.6. Now, it's not a bad thing, by the way, to have a high delta, because when you score a goal is 1 and an XG for a goal will never be 1. So you'll always have overperformance for players who've done well in the past, but you want to see how much, right? I mean, Saka's been unlucky. Like I said, he's basically underperforming his XGI by 1.3. So again, here for me, Bowen comes out on top. He's slightly overperforming. He's got about 0.8 of XGI overperformance, but he's basically meeting his good stats. He's performing when the fixtures turn. And I would say even potentially after this Chelsea game, he is somebody who you can look at as an option.
Nice. I will say this one thing about Bowen is they played an amazing game against Liverpool. So I think partially his stats may be heavily influenced by that game. But regardless, over 4 or 5 game weeks, he's shown very, very good signs. And West Ham looked really good this year, Possibly, I don't know about top 4, but top 6 Europa League challenging team for sure.
For sure. So in summary, Sonaldo, I would say, look, Bowen is the best of the bunch if you have the extra 0.5. I already talked about the flexibility he'll give you to either have an asset in addition to Antonio or instead of. Gallagher for me would be the second, but for me the James McArthur injury has slightly tainted it to the extent that don't expect big things. He should tick along, but he could frustrate if he moves into a more defensive role with Eze starting in the 3, or if Milivojevic continues to play. Both of them, as I said, are unlikely. They will find a solution, but he could frustrate. ESR is a close third. Keep him if you have him. If you're going for somebody new, maybe not the top of my list. And Cornet, unfortunately, again, is the last in this list. Not against anyone who goes for it, but know this, that you're going for a punt. If he gets in the next 4 games another 8 penalty box touches, don't expect 4 more goals. There were three other names that came up in that table. So Trossard, I didn't include here simply because Brighton have looked to be struggling for goals. So it wasn't something that I potentially wanted to go to. And this is when he's been playing as the false nine. Rafinha, I think I don't need to spend any time on. If you have him, you keep him. He's fit. Bamford is fit. So he's obviously a great option. Even if you're looking for somebody and you want to go up to Rafinha, that's absolutely fine. The issue with Rafinha is you look at the fixtures after 3 game weeks and it's a sea of red. They have Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool. So that's the issue. And then finally, you should also consider, as you're looking at this bracket, to shift formation. A lot of people are looking at if they have 6.5 in midfield and a 4.5 million defender, you can swap that and you can have another 4.5 million midfielder, and get a 6.5 million defender. So that basically changes a bit of formation, and you can go into so you don't have to have 6 million midfielders. So that's basically what we wanted to cover here.
No, fantastic. Very in depth, and I'm sure the viewers will really enjoy listening to your segment, and I appreciate the amount of time you put into it. And so you guys, you heard it here first. Pros recommends Bowen as his choice in the midfield from the data presented previously. So we'll move on to the striker section.
Yep.
Okay. So this section is a little bit different from how Pros presented is, because we have more, not historical, but data to back up those assets. Whereas right now, what we're seeing is, there's tremendous value in the defense and the midfield, and especially in the wing backs. Everybody should move towards getting the new template in, James, Cancelo, Trent, Jota, and Chilwell, although he just got injured. So that should be a priority. Would you agree, Pros?
Absolutely. We'll spend some time on Chilwell, but yeah, I agree. The structure is exactly how you said it.
Yeah. So this is a little bit more of a interesting, emerging, fun section, and so in terms of the forward line, it's been a difficult season for FPL forward line. Pretty much all the effective, high ownership players, Ronaldo, Vardy, Antonio, Tony, Kane, have really failed to deliver, especially at their price points. And a quick word on Vardy. I know a lot of people held on to him right now, and it's been a painful journey. Leicester are a little bit of a liability right now, but Pros, what would you do as a Vardy owner moving forward?
I would keep him. I mean, if you've gone through the turmoil of the last few weeks, and if you smartly held on to him or benched him last week, then now's the time to keep him. I mean, Watford for sure. After that, reassess. I mean, there's a lot of options coming up in the premium forward bracket. If Kane is looking good, if Lukaku is back, if Ronaldo gets a new manager bounce, if there is a new manager. But I think especially for this week, definitely keep him.
Awesome. So with that being said, I know this segment is more kind of dedicated to, I guess, those Antonio owners in many ways, because a lot of people are confused on what to do with him. I guess the pragmatic approach would be to keep him and, wait for those fixture turns in game week 16. But with that being said, a lot of managers may benefit from transferring him out now because it creates funds to, invest in elsewhere in your team, right? So there are some other emerging options that may be able to help you create some funds. So as an Antonio owner, Pros, what are your plans moving forward?
Look, I did seriously contemplate taking him out, because there's a couple of reasons people are hesitant to do it. Number one, there's value tied up in him, which I think is not a great argument. I mean, there's only about 0.3. I think if you got him at the beginning of the season, that's not a lot. I mean, in a season where you have so much value with defenders, only one premium, we shouldn't be going after 0.3 if you really think somebody can come in and do better. And the second argument people have is there's nobody else, right? I mean, who's really delivering? If you went without Antonio, who was the one who really delivered for you in the last few weeks? Not many, right?
Exactly.
People went Vardy, some went Tony. So nothing has really worked out. And so I think one of the things that you're going to try and do is open up the space to some new emerging options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a very common approach I'm seeing is to do Antonio to Tony as well. But let's be real, Tony's been very frustrating as an owner myself. So I'm not going to talk about Tony. And by the way, to kind of speak on the points we made last week about new manager bounce, none of the new managers lost this week, which is a sign that new manager bounce really does exist. And again, we last week we talked about how new manager bounce affects 5 games, so that should be very exciting. So today, again, I'm going to try to decipher these new emerging assets mainly through the eye test. And since the sample size is so small, we have to note that there's a change in landscape in the Premier League right now. So it'll be very interesting to see what they're playing, how they're playing, their positioning, new roles, and we'll carefully look at their fixtures. So the first guy I want to get to is none other than Mr. Callum Wilson. So here we have the kind of Newcastle lineup, and this is how they set up this weekend. I thought they were very, very attacking. So the viewers need to kind of understand that the Newcastle options are emerging right now because of Eddie Howe's attacking style of play. And this was seen Willock starting over Hayden, which is a much more attacking kind of lineup. Naturally, I would say Wilson is the best pick of them all. Talisman on pens, unlucky not to score in both games versus Brighton and Brentford. He created a lot of chances in the game, most shots in the box, 5 of all players in game week 12, really attacking. And I know ASM got the points, but Wilson was in the right positions. Here's a couple caveats to why Wilson may be dangerous and a short-term punt, is because he's on 4 yellow cards and 1 yellow card away from missing that Norwich game that we really want him for. And a lot of people are saying he's a short-term punt, and yes, he is. And a lot of people said that we should have got him last week, but he didn't score last week. So, Pros, wouldn't you say that it's okay to hop on him for 3 game weeks now?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think the yellow card thing is good to have in the back of our mind, but we sometimes forget that players also know this. So I don't know if you played Sonaldo during the Costa season, the Chelsea forward. And there was this this exact situation where through the whole December period, he was on 4 yellows. Nobody got him. He kept scoring. And essentially every game people said, okay, next game's going to be the one when he gets his yellow. And he was basically that kind of player who was aggressive. So he was always prone to a yellow card, but they didn't. And those people who had him or went for him really profited. So I wouldn't use the yellow card as a reason not to go for Wilson. I think he's a great option.
Fantastic. So yeah, a couple things about Wilson. Wilson is a goal poacher, right? And this was evident in the image I have above at, I think, a minute 42, about 30 seconds, where he basically was a yard away from scoring. So again, this is the highs and lows of FPL. This could have easily been a goal for Wilson. So he may be a frustrating figure because he does very little throughout the game. But again, that's what a striker usually does, right? But the standout moment for me in terms of Wilson was at the very end when ASM kind of scored the equalizer and he was doing the flip celebration. Wilson was busy getting the goal out of the box, moving to the center line and trying to get the winner. So just a winner's mentality and someone who's hungry for goals, and we love that as an FPL option. Quickly on Newcastle, their overall strategy right now is that they're very reliant on individual talent. Right now there's some cohesion, but it's in small areas of the pitch. I thought that I say Maximum and Richie were on an island on the left flank by themselves, and there was a lot of heavy attack from the right flank. So with that being said, ASM would be another great option, but a friend of mine on Twitter, FPLTT, he's a huge Newcastle fan, gave me some insight saying that ASM is definitely more of a assist threat than a goal threat. And but with that being said, when Howe has come in, they've been practicing this kind of back post run with ASM where he scored. So that may become a play for him. And with the new manager bounce plus these new tactics involved in attacking style of play, I feel like both these options are pretty decent. The difference for me is Wilson being on pens. And lastly, quick shout out to Joelington. I know you don't like Joelington, Frost, but
not me. Nothing against him. He's just
yeah, but I don't think he's a good FPL option. We need further proof of his kind of consistency. But Joelington definitely had the best game for the club, and I thought the difference was he played a little deeper. He's actually pretty good at getting past his first man. It's just After he does that, he has him so far on the left, and Wilson is man marked out of the game, so it's very difficult for him to kind of create and attack more. So, quick overview of Newcastle there, and to summarize, Wilson would be my pick of the bunch. How about yourself? I know there's only 3 game weeks, but as a short-term punt, wouldn't you be pretty excited with them?
I would, for sure. I mean, this again, ASM and Wilson are the 2 guys who should stay in this team. Fraser will come back at some point. Eddie Howe loves him, but Wilson will be there, and he got so many shots in as well this week, right? He was one of the highest shots in the box. He's a good guy. He's a good pick. He's always been good when he's been fit. So now, even under a more attacking manager, for me, he's a very good option. If the fixtures weren't so bad after 3 weeks, it almost feels like you get on him and then you have to get out after, because they have Leicester, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Everton. Everton not so difficult, but Norwich and Burnley in the next 2 out of the next 3 is actually very good. So I wouldn't fault anyone when you ask me the question on what I'm doing. One of the things I was considering was Antonio to Wilson.
Yeah. Again, he has 5 shots in the box, which is the most in Game Week 12. So I definitely think he's going to score in the next 3 games. So very, very good option in my opinion. So the second team I briefly want to cover is Aston Villa. But the reason I'm briefly covering him, because their fixtures are really bad for the next 7 game weeks. But I definitely want to keep an eye on Aston Villa, especially with Gerrard coming in. In some ways, we're lucky because we have 6 or 7 game weeks to kind of assess their assets and see how they develop as a team. And, Gerrard, I'm sure, will have enough time to kind of, implement his colors into this team. So their finished product should be coming when their fixtures are actually going to turn soon. So after the game, Gerrard came out and said, "These are the buzzes you miss as a player. This is the reason I wanted to stay in the game. It's my medicine, if you will. I love winning. I love competing. I love seeing my players happy and smiling." So, that just, when your coach says that, you must feel an umph of energy and wanting to do well for your coach, right? So I thought that was a very good sign. If you look at their lineup, they played a 4-3-2-1. I know this visual doesn't show it, and McGinn was playing absolutely baller status. I mean, he was making some incredible long balls. Even if you catch the highlight, it was like McGinn all first half. So shout out to McGinn there. But the front 3 of Watkins, Ings, and Buendia kind of struggled to find chemistry. They were happy to sit back and counter, and they only had 37% possession. Ings had 0 shots and 18 touches in his first under 70 minutes, so that's a very worrying sign. I feel like Ings has kind of struggled to fit into the Aston Villa team this season so far. Buendia was subbed off, so there's some rotation there. And, the way you want to think about Aston Villa is that they're kind of a light Liverpool version, would you say? And Buendia and Watkins, like the inside forward, Mane, Salah type of play. And the one to keep on an eye on is Watkins with his individual brilliant goal over the weekend. So any thoughts on Aston Villa?
First thing to say is Tom Freeman, who's a Villa fan, did an excellent article on the Scout on what his thinking was in terms of the first game. So agree with everything you've said there. I would just say Watkins is good. Numbers basically came in. A lot of the good numbers came in after he moved to the central position again. So while he does thrive on the wing as well, a lot of the good work he did and the attacking threat came after he moved and he replaced Ings as the furthest forward. But I think, to summarize, Villa very interesting. Possibly, I'm more interested in their defenders or their wing backs. Because I think one of the things that Gerrard will bring is defensive solidity. Mm-hmm. And so I can see myself definitely going for a wing back in the, Matty Cash possibly in the future. But in terms of attack, Watkins is interesting. I think even the midfielders, whoever out of Buendia, Bailey, can basically nail that right hand forward position. That should be very interesting as well.
Fantastic. And then the next is Crystal Palace, and I'm just going to talk about Benteke in this section because you did cover Gallagher very well. So what we have here is Benteke's shots. This is the last 4 game week shots, taken, which is all inside the box and central, and his heat map, which is also very central. So it just goes to show that he's playing the classic forward position and shooting from the right places, which is very promising. So there, again, as you mentioned, Pros, previously, there's so many attacking options, and they're really stacked up there. So it's very difficult to pick out, who's going to get the goals, but you would assume as the number 9 that Benteke should be the one getting the bulk of him. So I think short term he looks pretty good because he's in form. If continue to play, I think he's also a great option because their fixtures are very, very good. So if you look at Ted's graph here, hold on. TED Talks FPL, which I did a show with him on Monday, and I really enjoyed talking to Ted. But you can see Benteke is right up there inside the 12-yard box, and his shot volume is very, very large. Plus, on top of that, which is 18 shots in the last 6 game weeks, and a lot of him is on target. So, sometimes you can assume that, okay, they're making good shots, but it's also because he's just right in the good position, very close to the target. So I really like these stats and very promising signs for Benteke. Crystal Palace also has created 14 chances from the center, which is 35%. And that's a good sign because as I showed you in that shot volume chart, he's shooting from the center mostly. In Game Week 12, Crystal Palace created 57% of their chances, which is 8 chances from the center, which is another very promising sign for your central striker. With his ability in the air, his nice off-ball movements, which he's very underrated at, he really does make great off-ball movements in my opinion, and his link-up play that's shown in Game Week 12 and the fixture run, he definitely needs to come into consideration in my opinion. But any thoughts on Benteke?
Look, nothing to add in terms of what I said about the lineup, and he should retain his place. Again, I was talking to some Palace fans. He should stay there until Eze is completely back. I know Edward is the one who will replace him, but then Eze will move to the right. So he should continue to play. He's always a great option, but he's one of those players which you just watch and say, yeah, he's a great option, but you never go for him because you just never know if he's nailed or if he continues this form. But somebody went for him. That's completely fine. It's a good punt.
Yeah, I guess again, I'm talking about him as an emerging asset, but I'm not really sure if I would bring him into my team. So, I would tread lightly with my analysis here. But moving on. Last two would be Watford and our guy Teemu Pukki. But quick word on Watford. I think the guy you need to go for is Joshua King. I know people are talking about Dennis as well, but Dennis has some issues in my opinion. And why King, what I have up here is his XG and, goal attempts in the last 4 game weeks, which are all promising. Joshua King is one of those players that is performing to the level that he should be in terms of his XG and XGI. So he's not overperforming, he's not underperforming, he's giving you what you want out of him. And King looks good because he's also probably going to be on pens after Sarr missed both the pens over the weekend. Joshua King is also top of XGI. I know you love your XGI, Pros, in the last 4 game weeks of the entire league. And my good friend FPL Bruno was super bullish on Joshua King in game week, I think 6 or 7, made me get him in. And then I sold him like right before my wild card. And then he, went on to score 2 or 3 goals. And so he's pushing me again to get Joshua King. So I may listen to my friend here and get him in. Dennis is very cheap at 5.2, but I'm not sure how nailed he is. And I'm sure you would concur. He had a sub appearance in the last 4 game weeks. And I know he's up there in terms of forward points in the last 4 game weeks, but King is playing consistently 90 minutes. Dennis is also playing wider than King. And I think Dennis is probably going to go to the AFCON with Nigeria as well, which is, worrying sign, and it's coming up soon, right? So for me, King is the goal threat, the nailedness, the long-term hold. I know they have Man City and Chelsea in the next 3, but if you can get him in early and bench him as your kind of enabler, then fixtures from 16 to 23, I looked, is really, really nice moving forward. So King versus Dennis, any thoughts on that, Pros?
I think you covered everything. I think just a note on AFCON. So usually Dennis isn't called up by Nigeria. He hasn't been called up for the last 2-3 years. But basically Osimhen is injured, and basically a lot of the media is calling for Dennis to be called up as his replacement. So that's where the AFCON stuff comes in. And by the way, this also applies to Cornet, who I forgot to mention, might also be going to AFCON. So this is just one thing to remember. It may be just a couple of game weeks, maybe 3, that they miss, but it's another thing that you don't want to be worrying about. And one word also Seb pointed out in Scoutcast yesterday, King's numbers are looking great, but they're also, a lot of them are driven by the last game against Man United. So we have to be a little bit cautious on looking at it. It does have a little bit of noise from one good game week, but generally he's been good. He's a good option. I don't want to overplay King as an option. I mean, it's still Watford. So, but if you're looking at somebody, I think King is better than Dennis.
Fantastic. Lastly, our guy Teemu Pukki. Yesterday I was listening to The Wire, and our friend Late Riser was very bullish on Teemu Pukki. So that's always a good sign when a top manager like himself is high on him. So new manager bounce came into effect with Dean Smith. Norwich looked quite dull in the first half, but they looked more lively in the second. His heat map from the last 2 game weeks show very promising signs. He's inside the 18-yard box quite a bit, like a striker should be. Pukki is Pukki. And, he's in the best form of the season so far. He scored back-to-back goals. So there's the signs are pointing there, and they have good fixtures, second in the ticker until the international break. So a very good long-term hold. You don't have to start him every week, and you kind of play him for his fixtures, right? And a key aspect to consider for Pukki is that he performs way better at home actually than away. So that's something you can also consider, just playing him in the home games. This season at home, he's had 6 shots on target and 4 big chances. He has had good underlying numbers too, and has had 11 shots in the box, which is which is double more than the second in the Norwich team, which just shows the importance of Teemu Pukki when Norwich do score, even though their scoring volume is very low. So it just highlights the importance of him as the talisman, and also he's on penalties. So until game week 24, they have 12 fixtures, and that's only 6 at home. So half of them are at home, which again, I'm very bullish on Teemu Pukki doing much better at home due to the historical data shown this season. Again, new manager bounce is in effect right now. So I think as a long-term hold, he could be a very, very valuable option as your 11th, 12th, 13th man in the team. So that's pretty much it for me in terms of the strikers. I know we went on for a while there. But to quickly summarize, again, you should definitely move towards those already proven assets and the template players, as we mentioned. And I guess we could talk about Chilwell a little bit here. There's a lot of fixtures swings coming up, fixture changes coming up. The landscape of FPL and the Premier League has changed. So while your team may be strong, do not be afraid to look for these differentials and these emerging options, because this is really where you can gain some rank, especially if your team is very template. So with that being said, before we go on to our plans, let's give me something about Chilwell. What do you think about what to do with him? And we'll wait for the news conference, Pros, but any thoughts on Chilwell?
Yeah, very topical. So good. We included this as our third topic. Mm-hmm. Look, I think he's going to be out for the earliest I've heard on Twitter is 2 to 4 weeks. The latest is very, very long term. So he's going to be out, and 2 to 4 weeks basically means 4 to 8 game weeks. So, you need to get him out if you have him in your team. But of course, wait for the press conference on Friday. So I'm not suggesting you do it right away. But you need to make plans to get him out if you have him. And the way I've thought about it is there's a couple of considerations here. If you're looking for somebody longer term, and if you don't have Trent, James, or Cancelo in this order, then I would replace them with Chilwell with one of the 3. If you have all 3 and you're looking for somebody else, then for me the question is between Chilwell's replacement, which is Alonso, or a Spurs wing back, let's say Reguilon. So between Reguilon and Alonso, for me, it's a no-brainer. Alonso is the better pick. He's had great stats for years. I mean, anyone who's been playing FPL for 5 years knows what Alonso is. And that's when a lot of the times he was playing in a back 4. This is a back 5, which basically suits him perfectly. So for me, we'll come to our teams, but if Chilwell is out for anything more than 2-3 weeks, then that's the transfer I go for. But I repeat, if somebody doesn't have Trent, James, or Cancelo, I'd rather prioritize those 3 because that's more longer term. Alonso, you'll need to again ship him out after 8 to 10 weeks, whatever it is, game weeks, depending on Chilwell's injury. With James, Cancelo, and Trent, you know that you have them for the season, hopefully, if barring any injuries. So that's my thought. I think the other thing people are thinking about is if somebody doesn't have James or Alonso, can they go Alonso instead of James? I personally wouldn't recommend it. And let me talk about the pros and cons. The rationale for people saying this is because James has played the last two games. Um, Thomas Tuchel basically said in the game he was looking to sub James out, and that's why Aspi played instead of Chilwell. Actually, he didn't intend for Aspi to play on the left, but he wanted to give James a rest. So it's coming, right? I mean, if you expect James to play against Man United, the fixture that he'll get the rest is the midweek game against Watford. So that's because the week after they play West Ham, and then after that they play the Champions League game, which is still important, the Zenit game for Chelsea to finish top of the group. So long story short, just because he may miss Watford, for me, isn't a big enough reason to go Alonso over James. For me, James is still the more superior pick. So if you can get to him, because he is a little bit more expensive, I would go for him over Alonso. This is just, this is all in the last 12 hours. So just some quick thoughts on this.
Perfect. I think you covered it perfectly well. And let's go to our teams. But my final question before we go there is, between the strikers that I mentioned, give me your, I know I'm putting you on the spot. Give me your top maybe 2 or 3 in order.
Wilson, number 1. King, number 2. Pukki, number 3.
Okay.
But of course, these are different prices. But in terms of how I expect, absent of price, these strikers to do over the next 3-5 game weeks, it will be this.
Perfect. Okay, I know we're getting close to the hour mark, so we'll wrap it up here. I have your team up here, Pros. Can you talk us through your plans?
Yeah, so for the listeners, I have Ramsdale in goal, Trent, Chilwell, James, and Cancelo, Salah, Foden, Son, and Jota in midfield, Tony and Antonio in attack. Now, Antonio obviously plays Man City, so I had 3 options. I could have rolled. I could have gone Antonio to Wilson, as I mentioned. And I was looking at the very super aggressive move of Son and Antonio to Gallagher and Kane. And this Son to Kane move would have only been if I had seen on Thursday again that Son being less involved. We haven't talked about Spurs in this one, but I wasn't very impressed with how Son was in that game. So I'm looking at moving Son to Kane if I don't see an improvement, and I'm not going to be afraid of doing that. But I think for this game, now that there are other problems, what I'll be doing is Chilwell to Alonso, 99%. If Tuchel says that Chilwell was okay, he just landed badly or whatever, he'll be back in a week, then I might just keep Chilwell and do Antonio to Wilson.
Nice.
And captain is Salah, of course.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I didn't know you were going to make the Wilson move. Very aggressive, and I like it. Yeah. Okay, so I have my team up here. Very, very similar teams. The difference between Kane and Son, and I also have Mbeumo. I have him on the bench, playing a 4-3-3 for now. Chilwell is likely to be injured, so I like that Alonso move. Maybe I'm going to copy it off you, but I'm looking at that.
A lot of people will be doing that, so you shouldn't be shy to do it. I mean, you didn't have anything to do with your 2 free transfers. This is actually for you.
I know.
a good. But look, I mean, my recommendation to you would be, you don't have to go Alonso. You can also think about, because you have so many transfers, right? I mean, you have 3 in the next 2 weeks, if you think about it, or 3 before the next game week. Map out your team on what you want to do. Do you want Antonio in 3 weeks? If you want him, then maybe getting some funds out of the 4th defender may be better. So, I mean, it's an advice to anyone listening, is just make your team for when you want a certain player. Maybe in game week 15, we want Ronaldo, Antonio. So get those players in, see then what does that mean for you to change Chilwell into what? It could be Lamptey. It could be, somebody else. Or if you can go Alonso, I think he's the best option in your setup.
No, that's fantastic advice, because I was actually doing that previous to our recording today, because I really want to somehow get Antonio in, but it's quite difficult. I don't know who to drop, and so it's something. Again, I said I'm going to burn my transfer, but likely not. And I think that's a good idea to think that I actually have 3 or 4 transfers to get to Antonio. So I will do that long-term planning. Before the Chilwell injury, I was even thinking about dropping Livramento to Ben Johnson. I don't know. You might be against it, but it would have created some funds. Go
I
ahead.
prefer Ben Davis for that price
Okay.
or 8 Nouri, but 8 Nouri has very bad fixtures in the foreseeable future. But
Yeah.
and I also like Mitchell
Yeah.
from Crystal
Yeah.
Palace.
You're afraid of the Kufal coming in, right?
Yeah, that's
Mm,
the issue.
yeah. But yeah, last question. Do you think Mbeumo to Gallagher makes sense here?
I wouldn't do it for the second transfer because you don't need to
Mm,
play him, right?
I don't need to play him. No. Mm,
So I would just do one, which is Chilwell to Alonso or whoever, and
hmm.
just keep. By the way, Mbeumo, I would play him over Huang. I mean, I
I'm
know
thinking
Huang is your
about it.
boy, and
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
just look at him over the last couple of weeks. I think he's been hugging the touchline a
Yep. Yep.
lot.
Yep.
Norwich isn't the same Norwich.
Mm,
I keep warning people that we keep thinking of Norwich like the Daniel Farke Norwich. It's Dean Smith Norwich.
mm.
They'll be a lot more solid. Watford, sorry, Wolves don't score too many goals. Everton have been conceding a lot of shots, a lot of chances. I know we've been burnt by Mbeumo and Tony. So yeah, if you wanted to, let's say, go Gallagher and play him instead of Huang, then maybe. But yeah, there's some options here. But you're like these are luxury moves. People are here firefighting how to get Jota, Foden, James,
Yeah. Yeah.
Cancelo. Here you are thinking about Mbeumo to Gallagher. But, fair play. Well done. Good team.
Yeah, yeah, you too. I appreciate it. Yeah, I do agree. And Bumo's matchup here is very good, and Huang has been, playing so wide and quite disappointing the last few game weeks. But the reason I have him in my lineup is he's my boy, and when am I ever gonna have an opportunity to play him the rest of the season? Because I know I'm shipping him out in 2 weeks. So that was my reasoning here. But things will change drastically in the next few days. So. Let's
Indeed,
wrap
Phil.
it up here, Pros. Quick shout out to Prakash, who really helped me with these visuals today, so I appreciate it. But guys, thank you so much for joining us today. The Burning Question series has gotten a lot of love, and we really appreciate your kindness and support. And Pros, it's been a pleasure again. Any final words, and then we'll wrap it up.
No, likewise, it's been a pleasure. Thank you everyone for listening, and good luck for your. We're heading into the real time of fantasy football, where you have games every other day, and new information coming in. So just stay clued on, and best of luck.
Yep. Good luck, guys. Thank you.